This month on Security Works, PSTN News profiles the Unabomber, who has struck corporate America again. Important information on keeping your workplace safe from these types of disasters.
And then Dave interviews Steve Druschel, National Strike Liaison Coordinator for American Protective Services, to see what security managers need to know about preparing for a strike.
Then we'll profile a product that can save your officers' lives and employees' lives from a potentially lethal smoke inhalation situation, the Safe Escape Smoke Mask.
All of this here on the January 1995 edition of your Security Management News and Information Service, Security Works. Hello everyone, I'm Holly Hayes, and it's great to be back this month again for another edition of Security Works.
That's right, it is great to be back. Of course, I've been gone for a little while. I have been so busy on assignment, but it is great to be back after a couple months here to Security Works because I always enjoy doing it.
Oh, we're glad you're back. And as you probably already know, due to your requests, PSTN is now putting ProForce and Security Works on one tape. Now, hopefully this will save you some shelf space. That was kind of hard, shelf space, and also make PSTN a more convenient product for you to use.
Well, and if you don't have shelf space or shelf space, we have, and that's why we're going to make it available for you in our TOD program. If you want to get them, because I know sometimes it's difficult to locate even, or if you've lost tapes, or if you're a new subscriber and you want to find some tapes in the past, we're going to have it available through our Training on Demand program to make it that much more convenient for everybody. And that's what's more, you know, that's the reason we're here, is to get training, make it convenient for everyone.
Exactly. So we definitely want to encourage you, if you have not already explored our TOD, Training on Demand catalog, look into it. As Dave said, if you're interested in seeing some shows, or if you have a specific problem and need to address it and get some training immediately on it, it's a great way to do that. That's right. So we encourage you to check into it if you haven't already.
That's right. And you know, we have another great show full of interesting security information. So let's go ahead and get started with Kim Fowler at the PSTN News Desk for the latest news affecting the security industry. Kim?
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. Security has intensified across the country since an advertising executive was killed by a mail bomb. The FBI believes the bomb was sent by a man who's targeted certain industries over the past 16 years. The odds of getting a letter bomb may be slim, but this latest attack has triggered sales of items that detect metal in mail or protect employees from suspicious packages. In addition to the run on these items, companies are hiring more security officers and telling employees to be alert for anything suspicious. Here's Tim Sheld.
His crime spree is one of the most notorious and baffling in recent memory. The Unabomber has struck 15 times in the past 16 years. His attacks have left 2 dead and nearly 24 injured. The latest victim, Thomas Moser, was an executive for a New York City advertising agency. He was killed Saturday when he opened up a package sent to his New Jersey home. Federal agents now say that package, the size of a videotape box, was mailed from California.
The package bears a postmark of San Francisco on December the 3rd. So, of course, we're conducting an intensive investigation here in the San Francisco area.
This was the 8th explosive device mailed by the Unabomber. In 7 other cases, packages containing bombs were placed at locations. Over the course of 16 years, he has struck in Illinois, Utah, Tennessee, California, Michigan, Connecticut, and now suburban New York City. He has targeted people in the fields of science, psychology, computers, aviation, and now advertising.
This has made it very difficult from an investigative standpoint to actually articulate to our investigators links between victims. Many times you're able to discern what type of a subject you're looking for by looking at the victims. But as I point out to you here, we have a very broad spectrum of victims.
One link authorities are checking into is Moser's promotion to the #2 spot at the Madison Avenue firm of Young and Rubicam. The news was featured in the New York Times December 5th. 3 of the Unabomber's other victims were also mentioned in New York Times articles shortly before their attacks, and the Unabomber's only communication came a year ago in a letter to the New York Times. At the offices of Young and Rubicam, co-workers expressed shock at why the popular executive would have been targeted, just in case the company stepped up security.
We have a number of meetings scheduled with the staff today. We also have a series of internal announcements that have been made. There's plenty of opportunity for the staff to communicate with the management, and they're doing that, and we're happy with the progress that's being made.
Metal detectors have been installed at the District of Columbia Police Headquarters, but that action comes late for 3 law enforcement officers. Andy Field has the story.
Virtually every Washington government building has one. The police headquarters didn't. And officers are furious that the city didn't protect them with x-ray machines and metal detectors.
You can walk in that building right now, and you probably wouldn't get stopped.
Close off Indiana Avenue so we can land the helicopter there.
The chaotic shooting trapped reporters inside headquarters. Moments later, 25-year-old Benny Lee Lawson had killed 3 officers, a 28-year veteran, Henry Daly, and FBI agents Martha Dixon Martinez and Michael John Miller. The gunman also died in the shootout. The shooter had been interviewed on another murder, and police say that he said he might do this.
And he made a threat to the detective, and he was told, fine, come on down, but come right. And the gentleman did come right. He came right with his gun.
Outside the still unsecured police department, a half-staff flag and flowers for the murdered officers. But just across the street, every entrance to the mayor's office and the federal court had some of the tightest security in town. The workers and visitors there like it that way.
I wish we didn't have to, but I really don't mind.
I like the protection.
It's fine with me.
2 teenagers have been charged with killing 2 security officers over a speedboat. Fred Fuser and William Jensen worked for a service patrolling a resort community at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. The officers were found each shot once in the head a day after confronting the boys about the boat. A robber who killed a Brinks guard has been executed in Indiana. Gregory Rosnover died in the electric chair for the murder of a police officer who tried to arrest him. He was convicted in the December 1980 shooting of Indianapolis Police Sergeant Jack Orberg. He was also convicted of killing Brinks employee William Sieg during a $50,000 heist from a Kmart store. A former MGM Grand Casino worker has been arrested after allegedly robbing the casino cage at gunpoint. Security officers for the hotel captured Stephen Birnbaum outside the front entrance. They say he had a bag full of chips valued at $450,000. Birnbaum had been fired in October for stealing on the job. A federal jury has cleared a former security officer accused of masterminding a $7.4 million robbery. But a priest and an ex-guerrilla from Northern Ireland have been convicted in the robbery of a Brinks depot. The January 1993 holdup in Rochester, New York is the nation's 5th biggest armored car company heist. And finally, Roger Comstock has resigned at Borg Warner Security. John O'Brien has been named president of the corporation's Guard Services subsidiary. O'Brien has been with the company since 1966. And that's the news for this month. Holly, back to you.
Thanks, Kim. You know, even though we hear information about the demise of labor unions, a strike at your workplace still has a serious chance of becoming a reality. When Dave Smith was working on this topic for the PSTN Training on Demand catalog, he sat down with Steve Druschel. Steve is an expert on strikes who spoke with Dave about them from a management perspective. Let's hear what he had to say.
I'll tell you, the word strike, every security manager in the country has to feel something in the back of their neck or somewhere when they hear that word. You're an expert in planning and dealing with strikes. Give me some advice for that security manager about when to start preparing for a strike at their facility.
Well, the first thing I ask, the question is have you just got done with a strike? And if you just finished one, then that's the time to start. But if that's not the case, then you should plan as far ahead as you can, and I usually say anywhere from 6 months to a year out. I find that by doing that, you can kind of do some dress rehearsals, and you can have everything prepared. You've done your deployment studies, you've selected the proper security agency, and you've got your documentation teams all established, so that you got a pretty good understanding of what's going in. And there's another thing too: are you going to work or aren't you going to work? Is this a working strike? It makes a big difference. If you're going to shut down and just negotiate, then you're not going to have nearly as many problems. But if you're going to be working like most of them are, you've got to do some real serious
Yeah, because you're going to have the egress of people coming in and going, the substitute workers.
Oh yeah, you've got to find out where you're going to get those, you know, how you're going to deal with it. Some companies have even been naive enough to believe that they can start a strike and then bring people across the picket lines to fill out applications. Not a good plan.
No, that's right. Well, you know what's going to happen, though? The budget manager is going to come to the security chief and say, let's prepare for the strike, but don't spend any extra money.
Exactly. That's the common thing is people will call up and they'll say, I got a strike 2 weeks out, and it says, okay, you know, we need to get in there, we need to do a deployment study. A what? Yeah, we need to come in, find out what we're going to need, what we're up against, how we're going to deal with your particular facility and your particular unique problems. And they say, well, what's that going to cost me? Well, gee, I don't know. I got to look at it. Well, we don't want to spend any money yet. Well, you're 2 weeks out.
Now's the time to start spending money, right?
That's right, yeah.
Well, some basic concepts for a security manager who's never faced a strike before. I guess, first off, do I want to use my in-house security people to deal with a strike?
I don't recommend that, simply for one reason, Dave. There's so much emotional involvement between, even if it's contract and not proprietary, these security officers get to know each other. And they get to know the people, the employees, and so all of a sudden you pull them apart. What I recommend is bringing in an outside company, taking your present security force, allowing them to take care of business as usual, pull them off the front lines, so that when the thing is over, the tactical teams will go home, and there's no hard feelings, and if there are, they're minimal.
Right, the post-strike environment is much more coherent than cohesive for getting the product back online.
Exactly. And your existing force can be of great value when the strike is over or winding down, because your internal issues become a serious problem. You start losing a lot of product, you start having some internal thefts, some damages, because now your temporary people realize they're going to be displaced. And so your internal force has a better understanding of what's going on inside the facility than your TAC teams do.
Right. What are some key tools that the security manager might want to think about having during a strike?
Well, first off, they want to be able to select a company that has the ability to support them. For an example, we did a 5-state preparation, which involved about 176 security personnel. That needs more than just your team to do that. So you have to plan ahead and look at these companies that can provide that type of service. The second thing is I suggest that you use a neutral video company. Somebody who just specializes in video, because then you have two separate companies working side by side and you have more neutrality. Your documentation is more in line with what's really happening rather than what they want to portray.
Right, and you can convince management the need for the video, because that's going to help them get the injunctions and that type of thing.
Injunctions are very important, because if you allow a tremendous amount of picket activity, then it escalates into some pretty serious actions down the road. So the video keeps the pickets in line, and it also gives you that documentation necessary to get those injunctions, and also file criminal and civil actions in the event that it's necessary.
Right, and the security manager has to be prepared for that long-term litigation, both criminal and civil.
Exactly.
Right?
Some of these litigations will last up to a year, year and a half, and so the videotape taping is very, very important. That documentation is worth everything.
Right, so you want to preserve your evidence, and also you want to make sure, I guess it's a good time then to start the training for your in-house security people and your tactical people. Then.
Exactly. Those deployment programs should be established way in advance, so every officer knows exactly what their responsibilities, their geographic responsibility is going to be. They have to know who they're going to be working with and how that's going to affect their day-to-day jobs. And once they have that established, they're a lot more comfortable with the situation.
Right, so it's important we convince management we are going to need some extra funding, though, to deal with the strike effectively.
They should definitely have money set aside way in advance to deal with the deployment and the pre-strike planning, and always establish a contingency plan. Don't wait until the last minute.
Right. Are there additional security concerns for managers, especially, let's say, officers in the corporation, or the people you want to specifically target to protect?
Exactly. You know, one of the things that's happened is in the past, management has been assaulted in their homes, their families have been threatened. You need to have that type of security posture to protect and guard against that type of activity. Another thing that happens many times is we forget that these replacement employees are human beings as well, and we say drive your own vehicle through the line and go to work. Well, I always suggest and recommend highly that everybody is bussed in and out, even the security personnel. All management, the fewer cars that you go through a picket line, the less liability you have. Let's face it, You wave a red flag in front of a bull enough times, he's finally going to charge. Right. And every time you have personal vehicles going in and out, you put yourself in that liability issue. Somebody's going to get hit or say they were hit. And that'll tie you up in litigation for years. Right, and that will, so what you're really saying is it may cost you more to get that bus system built in there at first, but in the long run you save maybe millions of dollars in liability exactly. issues. I mean, one person gets hit. One trucking firm ran over, a truck came through the line at a high rate of speed, ran over a security officer, and it cost them over $1.5 million.
And that's the thing, the liability literally is spread everywhere.
Oh, it is, and you have to be ready to accept that responsibility if you're in that type of a mode.
Well, I know there's nothing you can tell me as a security manager to make me feel good about a strike coming to my facility, but if I plan ahead, that can help take away some of the fears then.
Exactly. Planning ahead is the key issue, and having a good documentation team to support that plan. Without those two elements, you've got a real serious problem.
And one of the things I know that when we were doing the pre-pro on the program, there's a hard thing to say fast, but one of the things you said was that it is always important to think about bringing in that tactical unit to specialize.
Exactly. And there's some good companies out there. I've been in the business a number of years, and one of the things, do not shop price. If you're talking about get the best bang for the buck, but do not shop price. Right. It will cost you in the long run.
Right, and one of the problems is you bring in, if you handle a strike poorly, you end up on the worst thing of all, you're on the news that night at 10 o'clock on video, your people, right?
Oh, I'll tell you, I have seen some situations where they have brought in the wrong personnel, and the management team of the particular companies have really suffered seriously in the community.
We have to face it, because when the media shows up, the news media, they want that incident to occur.
Bet they do.
And they love nothing more than a security officer with a nightstick,
bad
a baton,
attitude,
swinging it at head level. That will always show up on the front page of a newspaper.
Exactly, absolutely. You know, you can have your worst day, and that is the day that the cameras will come.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you what. It's a tough situation. Strikes are tough on management, tough on labor, they're tough on everybody, but the security officer is caught right there at the friction point. I guess you know, I keep wanting to say something that'll make them feel better. Is a final bit of advice to security managers, what would you say?
It goes back again, Dave, planning. Make sure that when you decide that you've selected the proper company, you're comfortable with that their approach to the security, and you put everything together way in advance.
Right. Just like everything else, is planning really makes a big difference in the execution then, right?
That's right. And that documentation, those video cameras are probably the most priceless thing you'll ever have out there. That does keep everybody in check.
Well, Steve, I tell you what, this is good advice. Thanks for joining us on Security Works.
Thanks for having me here.
Dave, I thought that was such a wonderful interview. It's got some good information in it, but I have to ask you something, really. As volatile as that situation can get so quickly, can an officer or the managers ever really be prepared for what they might find?
Well, you know, I think one of the problems in strike planning, when you're talking to Steve, as well as my personal experience in those situations, a lot of times the problems come not from maybe even labor itself, but from ancillary issues that may come up, and that's where you can get sideswiped. You know, something occurring that you never expected. And I know that planning, we tell them, we all know it's critically important. We know that training your people is critically important. And I think opening lines of communication. But so often, in talking to Steve, for instance, the most violent strike he ever worked was one with teachers. And I think, how could you expect that?
A group that you would think would be somewhat calm and quiet.
Right. Somebody who you think certainly would not cause a lot of problems for your security officer.
Exactly.
But here again, this is the kind of thing you never are going to be able to have all the things covered. What you do is, though, you build in that trained response, which makes that flexibility. As the more trained your officers are, the more they can adapt and cope, and that's really what you need.
You know, I would imagine it's really interesting when you have people screaming and hollering at you and throwing things and, you know, all sorts of situations. Your personal instinct is probably to become very defensive and maybe even want to shout back.
That's right. That professionalism's got to come from training.
Exactly.
Absolutely right. And,
exactly.
And I think that he makes that point very well, as well as, you know, in all these issues, the tactical officers or tactical team being brought in can often make a difference. But it is tough. How do you ever be prepared? And oftentimes it's tragic in the fact that these are people that you work with and have tried to build rapport with.
Exactly.
So it can be tough.
Exactly. Now, Dave, I've got to find out from you. I hear that you've profiled an interesting product that could help security officers that encounter a smoke-filled environment.
That's right. I got to tell you, I've had a lot of experience with different kinds of masks for gas environments, from as far as your gas masks and dealing when I was, obviously when I was an officer, when I was in the service.
Right.
Yeah, I've been gassed all kinds of ways, and invariably I found gas masks were uncomfortable. Gas masks were hot, especially being in Arizona where I so often did this type of exercises. It was very frustrating. They were uncomfortable, and they were somewhat difficult to get out. If you were already in the smoky environment or the gas environment, get them out and get them on. This new product, I tell you what, for your security officers is really going to make a difference. And it's one of these things that I wish I'd had it, for instance, when I was on SWAT in Arizona. And I'll tell you, let's take a look at this. This is quite a product. You know, every security manager knows that in a crisis, the real key to your team's performance is going to be training, preparation, and equipment. And one of the pieces of equipment in certain kind of environmental threats, in say a smoke or a fire situation, is going to be, can your people breathe? You know, security officers that can't breathe aren't going to be able to do much good work for you. And today with me is Todd Resnick, and he's got a product that is remarkable, and it's going to let your people breathe in almost any environment and perform to the best of their ability. Todd, what is this? And this looks just like any other, almost like a Halloween device, but it really isn't. It's really something.
Yeah, it's serious. It's not for laughs. And what it is a temperature-resistant emergency breathing device.
We call it. Let's pick this up here. Yeah.
Safe Escape. And what you have is a special high-temperature rubber, and these are filters that take out all the toxins, or the kinds of toxins that are going to disable or kill people in a fire situation or other situations like chemical spills.
Right. The beauty of this is it protects people from gases, from chemicals, as you said before, from OC sprays. You know, there are people who resist security officers by spraying them with their chemical agents, or in a situation where chemical agents have been used, a security officer can be highly effective. This protects them against all this. A remarkable thing, I guess we have to tell them the history of this. This originally was designed in Israel.
That's correct. It was designed for use by Israeli military, and subsequent to that, Israeli civilians. And the prime advantage is it's something they can carry with them anytime, any place. For example, here is a unit right here, and you can see it fits very easily in a pocket.
Right. I think it's remarkable that, quite honestly, every security officer could have this attached to their belt as any basic part of equipment. And again, it comes in multiple colors, and the larger your order, the more you can have it custom made. But the great thing is as you said before, this was designed by the military. This will stop nerve gas. Not that we're expecting your corporation to be attacked by nerve gases, but there are situations in hospital environments, in industries that deal with chemicals, and even in what are basically, you would think, really paper-oriented industries, there are chemicals present, and that create hazards instantly.
When materials burn, the chemicals that are given off, it's just it's a witch's brew, and cyanides and so on. But not just what happens within your facility. I'd really like to emphasize it's your wide area. A lot of these accidents that occur, especially rail accidents, they can affect a very wide area, miles. And
right.
Your facility could be perfect, but a cloud of toxic gas is going to come your way, and you might just have to evacuate, leaving your entire premises vulnerable.
And the security officers are going to be responsible for making that evacuation occur safely and efficiently, and if they're protected, they're going to do it more confidently.
If they can't breathe, they're going to have to run just like everyone else.
Right, right, and that's critical. In fact, for you risk reduction specialists out there, you might think anybody who works above the first floor might have one of these available. You have multi-stations for this type of thing for,
yes,
for
we have
every employee.
Wall mounts, the belt loop carry case, and very easy to breathe. You can speak normally, you can use radio, you can use telephone, you can hear. All your senses are enabled. There's no mass to affect head or body movement. It's a very comfortable, practical unit. Goes on in seconds, and it's disposable. You use it, it's done its job, you throw it away. It's not something to maintain.
Right. Well, I think it's fascinating, and you have security or training masks that I think are great here that you actually would issue or have one available and train your officers how to put it on quickly. And in fact, your entire employee staff can see this is so self-evident how to put it on. It's very quick and efficient. Regardless of the employee size, this fits them. If your security officers have to do some form of actual security work with this on, they can still use weapons, they can maneuver. If it's a high-risk situation where they have to face threats, they have great visibility for doing that. And also in a rescue situation, they want to be able to see and be aware. This has all this there. The magic of charcoal is so remarkable. Now, one thing we want to caution, it doesn't protect against carbon monoxide, but that's just one of the threats in a smoke environment.
Carbon monoxide is not what's killing so quickly as other gases. You could be dead much faster from cyanide, and carbon monoxide is not present in chemical spills and so on. So we will be able to offer a CO version in the future. It will add to the cost, it will add to the bulk, but it will be available. It's been stated by experts that in most situations it's not necessary.
Right, and again, we want to emphasize that this takes care of the vast majority of threats that your officers would face or your employees would face in a fire environment or a chemical spill environment. And once again, it doesn't have to be generated or created by your facility. It can come from outside, and that's one of the things to take into account.
It doesn't have to be an accident either. You remember the World Trade Center, and that certainly wasn't an accident.
In this day and age, I guess if you can say if your corporation is a high-profile corporation, you could be targeted as a victim, and that's something that we hate to talk about, but that's a reality. And here again, this type of equipment would become essential, become critical. Again, for employees above the first floor, this often makes a difference between life or death in a fire situation.
Another situation, fire is a big one. We've heard about cleaning chemicals, ordinary cleaning chemicals being improperly mixed or used, and ammonia clouds or chlorine clouds being generated inside buildings. Yeah, very disabling.
Just the last couple of years, you've seen literally thousands of employees sent to hospitals because of improper utilization or just disposal of chemicals. Somebody trying to pour them down the sink and actually poisoning an entire building. And this is where this particular situation would fit this mass profile exactly. And I think one of the things that we want to emphasize is that it's so lightweight, it's inexpensive, your people can carry it all the time with them, and it does that one thing we're always saying, is allow the security officer to do their job in a very hostile respiratory environment. And breathing reflex, just to emphasize it for someone who is trained in a chemical environment, that breathing reflex is the most powerful reflex we have. It dominates us. When we can't breathe, we can't think of anything else. And we want our people to be able to do our jobs regardless of what's happening around them. They are the difference in people surviving very often critical situations.
You could say it's also the peace of mind, and it would affect the decision making of any security or safety officer. Should I continue this way, or should I go back out and save myself? Should I help others or help myself?
Right. Well, I'll tell you, when I saw this, I saw the tests. This is scored so high in protection against a broad range. I said everything from nerve gas to chlorine spills, this protects you. And for extended situations where you have to move in it to get people out in a rescue situation, it's fantastic. It's almost made, what it is, made for a military and security situation. And that's what so many of our people out there face, is a high-risk security situation.
I think you saw the test from the Michigan hazmat, Wayne County hazmat, where they had 75 times the normal concentration of CS, CN, and pepper mace, and 3 men were in there exercising for 40 minutes, had no
adverse effects at all
whatsoever. So
that's right, and yet they could still, it's interesting because people note that the other senses, including, they can still get odors sometimes, but not any of the negative effects. It's remarkable from looking at these things occur.
Dave, if you ever used a conventional respirator, you probably know it's like breathing through something. You just can't breathe. This is just very natural, just normal breathing, normal seeing. All your senses are enabled. It's not uncomfortable product to wear.
I can remember the first time I ever had to do a SWAT exercise in full gas outfit. It felt as if every exertion was so much harder because you're focusing on breathing. You have to suck in. Imagine if you had to rescue people from, say, a medical facility, and you're wearing a regular respirator. Your exertion rate would be so dramatically
It's cumbersome.
increased.
It gets in your way, and you can see just how thin this is. It's just a second skin,
right?
And a very flat filter and flat visor. Everything stays to the head.
And the vision is fantastic. I'll tell you, I was very impressed with this. I was anxious to talk to you about this because I think you got a tremendous thing. Again, the Israelis have brought us great tactics for enforcement situations, security situations. now they brought us excellent equipment for high-risk situations. Something you want to look for, certainly for your security people, but perhaps for literally everyone in a corporation should have one available if they're in any kind of business that faces that risk.
Well, whenever I'm in an airplane, I carry one, and if I'm in a high-rise building or underground, any place where you potentially could be trapped and gases could form, I want to have respiratory protection with me.
Yeah, I tell you what, in this day and age, it's an excellent product. I want to thank you, Todd, for joining us on Security Works and talking about this, because I think this is really going to make a difference.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, for more information about the Safe Escape Emergency Smoke Mask, call our friends at Fume Free Incorporated. The number is on your screen. It's 1-800-386-3373. And the fax number there is 407-221-4625.
Tell you what, Holly, I'm going to miss all those masks, so that kind of gave you that Darth Vader effect, you know.
I bet.
Well, Holly, that's it for Security Works for January 1995. Now remember, this month's ProForce on Strike Security will be coming up next, and we want to thank you for using PSTN as your source for security training and information.
We'll be back next month with a new series from attorney Dave Lebrecht. He'll be profiling incidents that have put security operations in court and offer tips on how to avoid this happening to your organization.
That's right, don't miss it. That's an important one. Now, if you have any comments about what you've seen or what you'd like to see on PSTN, or if you'd like to comment on our new format, call our producer, Steve Reederer. The number is on your screen, 1-800-624-2272. And he's at extension 4394. Please call and tell him what you'd like to see.
Definitely. Well, we sure thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time here on Security Works. A look at providing security in a strike situation, next